Molawini kinfolk. It's your boy, that guy, JEM, back at you with ACES Part 3. Okay? So, ACES Part 3, we are going to talk Maya and we're going to talk After Effects. So, currently, right now, we're going to dive right in. We're in Maya right now. This is the robot you saw in Part 2. So, this is one of the robot replacements that I'm going to use for the redo of my Seeing Tomorrows and a new franchise I have, Nina Blue, that's coming out. So very first thing we're going to do here, just like we did in Blender, we're going to dive right into setting up our environment, our ACES environment. So for that, you want to go into Maya, you want to go to your preferences, and we're going to search and find the color management tab. Okay, so you see your color management tab. We're going to choose that. Now, I already have, as you guys know, I already have ACES installed on my system. If you don't have ACES installed, what you have to do is same as before. You have to go install the OCIO management software. Okay, your config files. There's a link below where you can find that. I've got ACES 1.2, but whatever version of ACES you want to put on there, all you have to do is just go find that. And then once you download it, set up a folder. My folder is called Color Space here. This is where I have all my open color IO file, config files all downloaded to. I have a folder here that I extracted it to. You see ACES 1.2, that's the one I'm rocking with. Config, OCIO, that's what we're going to use. I've already got it, so I'm going to hit cancel here. You would hit open if you're setting it up. The system would recognize it, and then what you want to do is make sure all three of those configuration tables are enabled. Okay, so use OCIO configuration, use OCIO input color space rules are all set up. And then what we're going to do is go over to our render space and our view transform, just like we did before. We're going to set it up for ACES CG, just like we did in Blender. Now, different here is I'm using a different monitor today. So I'm actually using a Netflix reference monitor for my Maya work. So I'm going to set that to P3D65. You would set yours, once again, if you have a sRGB monitor or a Rec 709 capable monitor, you want to set that view transform to whatever that monitor space is that you're going to view it in. I'm viewing my work in the D65, 2084, 1000 nits. Unless you have a monitor that's capable of 1000 nits, you probably don't want to use that transform. Okay. As you can see here, I'm going to go back and set it back up to sRGB ACES for you. And you kind of see how the color space changed a little bit. I don't know if you guys can see that. The robot changed a little bit in color because I'm changing the color space. Now I'm going to go back. I'm going to return back to that. Once I show you guys, like, you can set it up for Rec 709, like I said. And that's what we did in Blender. If you guys remember in part 2, we set it up at Rec 709 and we worked in that color space. I'm going to go back and set this back up for my color space on this monitor, which, once again, like I told you guys, is a Netflix reference standard. Unless you have a monitor that can do 1000 nits, I would not set it to that. Okay. All right. So do what your monitor is capable for, so you can make sure that your colors are accurate. Okay. What you're seeing is accurate. Okay, so finally down, I'm going to set up my image color space for ACES CG. Now what that's going to do is that if I bring, once I start bringing textures in, it's automatically going to set it up for that space. Okay, now once you got all that set up, you're pretty much good to go. You want to hit save. I'm not going to hit save. I'm actually going to cancel this out because I've got everything all set up, but you would want to hit save and save all that up. Now it's going to take a second for Maya to set up once you do that. So once you do that, Maya's going to do some thinking. It's going to reconfigure a lot of stuff inside of the system. And then it's also going to set up a couple more different rules for how you can work in Maya. And you'll see that in a second. Okay. So Maya's Maya's reconfigured itself. It set itself up. You got ACES color rules going on. So now what we're going to do, same as we did in Blender, now we're going to attack the shaders. We're going to go in and start attacking shaders, okay? And if you can look up really quick up top there, you'll see that my view space has been set up for P3D65, okay? Now you can change that view space there. You can change the viewport and what you're looking at right there. I don't know why you'd want to, but you could, okay? If you're doing something on the fly and you want to take another look at how it maybe how it'll look in Rec 709, by all means, you can go ahead and do that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go over to Windows. We're going to snap open our rendering thing, and inside of there, we're going to snap open Hypershade. So we're working in the Hypershade right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to graph out a texture, and we'll start there. Okay, so my textures, I've set them up primarily for V-Ray in here and the ACES workflow. Okay, now I have some tweaks. This is the same process that we went through in Blender. It's the exact same process basically, okay? We're setting up for a different render engine, but essentially it's the same process. So what I want to do is load in my color. I'm going to load in my color files. I'm going to load in my normal files. And then I'm just going to wire them up, okay? So we'll start again. I'm going to hit graph, okay? I'm going to graph that out. I've got all my stuff wired up, and you would actually import your files in, go through the Maya file import, once you've decided what a shader is, you're going to pick a shader, and then you're going to set that up, okay? We'll skip all that right now in the essence of going really quick. Okay, so what I have is I don't have these already linearized. They're just regular TGA files that came with the model as far as some of the model work. I've got it in ACES color space. Now we know right now that base color is wrong. You don't want to put that in ACES. You don't want to put that in ACES CG. You want to take it and convert it because it's a regular TG. It's an 8-bit TG A file. So we're gonna take a look over. I'm gonna grab utility sRGB texture. That's what I'm gonna do now. Because if you look up in the top here, you'll see that the shader ball has reflected the fact that now you have a rich color. It no longer has that log look to it. So that's kind of telling you that you're getting feedback here, and it's reading the file in. Now, one thing I want to do is I want to make sure I click ignore CS file rules. Okay, what is that? That was when we read in, we told Maya that any files that got read in would be read in as ACES CG. We want to tell Maya to ignore the fact that now we're picking a different input transform for that. So that's why we're going to click that. So it's very important. Make sure you click that because it'll ignore the overall rule it has. Okay, so we go to our normal map. You remember from Blender, we want to set this up as a raw file. We don't want to convert this file. We just want the file to be read into ACES properly. Okay, so this is a normal map. I'm gonna pick utility raw. I'm going to ignore the file rules on it. We're all set up. Okay, so that shader is actually set up, and if you guys look up inside of in the shader notes, you can see that the files that are being interpreted correctly are going to look rich in color. Now, as I look through that node tree, I can see that there's a bunch of different shaders here that haven't been, that probably suffer the same thing. They need to be converted from ACES CG over to utility sRGB texture. Okay, all right. So I'm going to zip through, and I'm going to make that change. I'm just going to zip through really quick and change all of those, and then double check them to make sure all of them are set up and wired right. Okay. So while I'm doing this, I want to tell you guys, if you haven't had a chance to go back and look at part 1 or part 2, part 1 and part 2 are available. Part 1 is more of an overview of ACES for anybody who doesn't understand what ACES is. I would strongly recommend if you're lost here and you need a primer or a quick understanding of what ACES is, go back, watch that video. Part 2 is really just dealing with other programs. So part 2 is we're taking the workflow of dealing with DaVinci, then dealing with the 3D program Blender and how it works with ACES, and then finally taking a comp and putting it into Fusion and working in ACES there. So part 2, part 3, really similar. Here we're working in Maya, and soon in a second we're going to work in After Effects. All right, we're going to save this out, and I think we got everything. Okay, we got one more here. One more, I think, that I've got to... I want to make sure I graph out. Always make sure you clear your graph, or, you know, make sure that you're working in the right graph, because it's really easy to miss. Really easy to miss something you're working on if you're not sure you're working in the right graph. So you want to make sure you're always working on the right graph. Okay. And as I said before, I'm using utility sRGB texture because I'm working on 8-bit sRGB files, and they need to be linearized to go with ACES. Okay, so really, if you want more in depth about that and that procedure and why you do that, go to part 1, go to part 2. Okay, so we're just going to do a quick render here of the asset. Looks a lot richer, a lot better than we had at the very beginning. You can really start to see some of the different, like how the textures have been set up, and some of the different types of textures, how they're reading light. Like I said, I haven't done, I've done no look dev on this. So as I adjust, I'm going to adjust the light dome here. See how it's responding to the light dome. I have an HDRI environment texture, which is being piped into this. Okay, and it's the same one I used on part 2 for the Blender. The exact same background that I used on the Blender version that I showed in part 2. Okay, so we'll catch a quick render, and there's a quick render that we're going to do from the new asset. That was the previous asset. Now we're going to see how the new asset, once those textures have been linearized, and you can see, man, like huge difference of how it read in the textures and how it's interpreting the textures, because it's taking the textures and changing them from, changing them from an sRGB, okay, 8-bit model, and actually linearizing them. So it's expanding it, you know, it's working with more color, it's working, and the light is actually able to read a lot better. So you're catching a lot more nuance in the images. Now, to be clear, you're working with 8-bit images, you're working with TGAs, okay? And no matter how much you can linearize them and do really vastly improve their performance, but it doesn't change the fact that they were created in 8-bit space. So it goes back to what we talked about in part 2. You want to make sure that you're creating high definition, if you want to call it, or high quality assets from start to finish. So if you're working in Substance or you're working in Mari, you want to be outputting 16-bit images. You want to be outputting high fidelity images. You want to be working in those upper color spaces. So even as what I was just saying here, that I'm going to change this model, I'm going to take it into Mari. I'm going to redo some of these textures and like beef them up in Mari so I can get more fidelity, more color, and it's going to take advantage of the wider gamut that you get from ACES. Okay? Don't know how to say it any more plainer than that. So here we are, Maya. Enjoy, guys. We're going to move on to After Effects and wind this whole thing up. All right, so we're back here and we are in After Effects. Okay, so I'm going to tell you why I waited to the last minute to do After Effects. I'm going to be brutally honest with you guys. After Effects is not built for this. This program. I've been using After Effects for almost 25 plus years. I used After Effects when it was owned by a company called Koza. That kind of, yeah, I guess I'm telling you guys how old I am. I've been using After Effects for a long time, and one thing I will say is that After Effects is a great program for motion graphics, great program for titles, great program for simple compositing. It's not a great program for high-level VFX work or film quality work. Okay, I'm just going to say that. Okay, everybody that knows me knows that I'm a very ardent proponent of using Blackmagic Fusion for independent film work. Okay, at a certain dollar amount. Once you get to a certain dollar amount, I strongly believe at that point you're moving into Nuke territory. So you should be using Nuke or Fusion. Fusion, I'm just gonna be honest with you. Fusion, if you don't have any money, Fusion. If you got bucks, Nuke. Plain and simple. Okay. Now, is After Effects good for titles? Yes. Is After Effects good for simple compositing and some minimal tracking elements? Yes. But as you guys will see in a second here, it struggles with wide color gamut stuff that, as you've seen from Fusion, was easily implemented. Okay, so let's dive into it. Sorry for that negative take, but I don't know any other way to be more clear. The first thing we have to worry about After Effects is the internal color management system of Adobe. Now, what you have to understand is there are several internal management color controls inside of After Effects. Okay, so the very first thing we're going to do, of course, is we're going to go in and we're going to grab a special plugin. You need a special plugin for After Effects to work in Open Color IO. Okay, so that plugin is going to be Open Color IO for After Effects. Okay, and it's the initial blog went up in 2012. The maintainer of the blog has done a really good job of updating the plugin. So as you can see down here, the plugin version is 2.0.1. The last date of update was May 19, 2021. What you want to do is grab whatever version of that plugin that you have. Okay, so basically what's going to happen is I'm going to extract the file. I'm going to be given two files. One is a README file. The other one is a plugin file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my After Effects install. So that's going to be inside your program manager, Adobe After Effects, whatever version you have. Now, I will say this, if you've got earlier than CC 2018, there's some workarounds you have to do. If you guys contact me, I'll give you a hand in overcoming that workaround, because it's going to involve someone who has After Effects, a later version of After Effects after 2018. Okay, well, we'll just go here. We're going to go to the support files. Okay, we're going to find our plugin folder. Okay, and what I always do is I create a folder called Open Color IO. Okay, and just drop that plugin right now. So we've done that. We've taken care of that. Now the next thing we want to do is we're gonna go search for our old friend, the config IO setup. Okay, so as we talked about previously before, I'm working on 1.2. So what you basically want to do is go to the link I provided in part 1, part 2, and I'll have it down in the link down in part 3. You want to go over there, grab that file, and load it into a folder that has ACES 1.2 on it. So you can see here I have a folder that has ACES 1.2. Here's our next thing. So we're going to import some footage. Now the first thing that we want to do when we're setting up our project, we're going to convert our project from an 8-bit channel, and I got there by going down to the bottom of this dialog box. We're going to convert this from 8-bit to 32 bits. Okay, now just a common thing here in After Effects. I would never ever perform anything in 8 bits. Okay, I don't care what you're doing, titles, anything. Always use 16 bits as your bare minimum. 32-bit if you're doing plugins that can handle 32-bit. So if you're working with most plugins, the majority of plugins can definitely handle 16 bits per channel. That's what you want to work in. Okay, so we're going to click 32 bits per channel here, and that's how we're gonna set this up. Now the next thing I want to do, because I'm going to set my working space, and this is the same paradigm that we've worked with all throughout this series. Okay, I'm going to set my working space for ACES CG. Okay, the next thing I want to do, and the final thing on this page, on this dialog box, is I'm going to linearize my working space. So I'm going to tell After Effects that everything I'm doing, I'm going to linearize it. Okay, all right, you'll get a little dialog box down here that's going to convert the gamma to 1.0. You're okay with that, okay? All right, so now we're going to click OK, and that's gonna change our working space. So you automatically right here, you see the robot change, okay? The robot changed back to the look we had in Maya. So now you're seeing what this same thing we had in Maya, which kind of tells you we're in a good place. We're working in a good place, okay? So we've done all of that. We've linearized our workspace. Okay. Now I'm going to work with some new footage here. I'm going to set up a new comp because this is an old comp. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do upon import, and this is another thing where I'm telling you guys, After Effects is a little bit of a beast to work with. So the first thing I want to do is interpret my footage, right? And mind you, I'm going to have to do this to every bit of footage that I bring in. Okay. So I'm going to interpret my footage. I'm going to click color management, okay? And what I want to do is color manage my footage. So what I'm going to do is say, hey, preserve RGB, disable color management conversions. Now this is one of the first steps to disabling the color management engine inside of After Effects. So this is one of the first things you're going to do that's going to turn off some of that internal color management that's going on with After Effects. So we're going to go ahead and click that. And as you see here, then that's going to turn that off. And you saw the image kind of change a little bit up here. Now this is red footage, so we're used to doing it. Now, there are some instances where the footage you bring in will not allow you to do this. It won't allow you to click preserve RGB. What we're going to do is I'm going to give you a workaround for that in a second. Let's go through the process, and then we're going to circle back to this. Okay, so we're going to do the Canon footage again, and we're going to go through the whole process there. You're going to drop our footage into the comp. Okay, we've got that there. Okay, our viewing LUT. Okay, and this would be considered your viewing LUT. We're going to turn off that use display color management. So now we're looking at what we set up at the very beginning. The parameters we set up in the very beginning under our working space. All right, so we're going to take this footage. And now we are going to run, okay, we're going to run our open color plugin on it, okay? So I'm going to take that open color IO, drag and drop it onto this footage, okay? Now, what you want to do here is you're going to go find that configuration file, okay? So that's what you're going to do. You're going to go find that configuration file, okay? And as you can see here, if you set it in the C program data open color, it'll find it automatically. So if I took my config file and sat it in here, it would come up every single time. I wouldn't have to go looking for it, okay? The only problem is, like I said, it may tend to run slow for you. So I use custom, go find it in the folder that I put it in, launch it, and then it comes up here. Okay. And now what I want to do is I want to do what we've done before. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to say, okay, what camera was this? Okay, because we're going to set ACES for the camera. We're going to set our input for the camera that we used. Okay, so we know it was Canon log Rec 709 daylight. So that's what this was set for. Okay. And then our output space, okay, that we're going to use, we're going to go back out to ACES CG. All right. All right. So we've set that up, and I'm going to use my I'm going to click and use my my GPU. Okay, so I've got a little bit more render speed here. Okay. Okay. Now the next thing I want to do is I've got to find something to sandwich this in, because I'm going out to ACES, and my input is Canon 709. Okay, so what I want to do is create an adjustment layer. Okay. And I'm actually just going to duplicate what we put here. I'm going to take that and I'm going to duplicate that. Now, if you've already got your plugin inside, if you've got your plugin already inside of that program data file, you don't have to do the copy paste. All you have to do is just launch it. If you launch it from here, it'll pick it up and you'll get it in here. Okay. But now what I want to do is I want to reverse this. So I want to say my input space is ACES, okay, because that's what our working space is. And my output space is going to be the Canon, okay? Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another layer, okay? So Control-Alt-Y. We're going to pick up another layer. I'm going to rename this layer Look. Okay. Now, what this layer is going to do is basically, I'm going to define in here what my, this is going to help me define what I'm doing. Okay. So I'm going to say, in my look layer, I'm going to say I'm getting an input of a Canon. Okay. And I'm going out to Rec 709. All right. So we're right back to where we were before. Okay. All right. So everything you do, you want to do inside of here. Okay. So everything we're going to do, we're going to throw down a new layer. So we go here and we throw down a new layer and we say, okay, I'm going to do a new layer. I'm going to rename that layer FX. Okay. So we're going to do some, okay. So we're going to do a level. Pick some levels and throw a level in there. Okay. Okay, so this is pretty much it. What you want to do is you want to get your look layer, have an adjustment layer, which serves as your input. That's your, this would be considered your IDT. So this is the entry point to what you're doing. So you want to establish this by saying, okay, this is ACES. Our input space is ACES because that's our working space. Then our output space is going to be Canon, right? The Canon 709, because this footage here is accepting Canon. Okay, so what we want to do is be able to say, okay, everything in here is going to be done in Canon space. Everything here is going to be done in that log C, and then it's going to feed down into this footage here. Okay, and that's how you would do your work in After Effects. All right, everything would have to be done in between here. Now, commonly, what I'll do is I'll just take these two. I'll take these two files here, and I'll turn them into guide layers. Okay. The reason being, you don't want to touch these. You want to leave them alone. You go ahead and hide them, and then everything you do here, you can just build your effect stack in here, and you would commonly do that. You would put anything that you would put on top of this would feed into that, and you know you're good to go. So I don't know. That's After Effects, man. I know there's a couple other tutorials on there that are a little bit more intricate. I'm going to keep it real with you. I see no reason whatsoever to do this workflow. You know, no reason whatsoever to do this workflow. So, you know, I don't know what else to say. It's messy, it's overly complicated. You have to defeat all kinds of different levels, and I'll just got to show you guys what I'm talking about. Okay, so if I bring in this footage here, and I forget at some point, I forget to turn off this use display color management, or I bring in new footage and I forget to interpret that footage with a working space, or just any number of a bunch of different things, then it's gonna wreck all of the whole entire workflow is wrecked. Number one. Number two, the handing this off then to someone else, having someone else come in here and try to figure out what you're doing, even if you're just doing a simple handoff, you're creating a mess. Okay, I don't know any other way to say it. You're just creating a mess. Unless you start, you note out everything, it's gonna be a huge mess. It's After Effects. I know a lot of you guys are going to use it. I'm going to do a video, man, about Fusion and possibly even Nuke, even though I know Nuke is not a huge opportunity for a lot of people, and I get it, it's price, but Fusion is, and I think you can accomplish what you're trying to do. If you're trying to do object removal, if you're trying to do intricate stuff that needs to blend in realism, then use the best tool for it. Okay. Now, am I doing my titles in Fusion? No, I'm not doing my titles in Fusion. It's just overly complicated. Doesn't make sense. But After Effects is great for motion graphics. It's great for moving and animating objects. In a certain space. Awesome. Is it the best comping tool to comp realistic pieces? No, not right now. Okay, plain and simple. Will it get you by? Yes, but then maybe commit yourself that you're not going to work in wide gamut, or you're going to find a workaround. You're going to find some workaround. You're going to output this stuff in regular EXLR, linearize the best you can, and then wait till you get over into DaVinci and then try to plus it up in an ACES workflow. Okay, so output is open EXLR, linearize everything you have, and then send it over as a linearized open EXLR, and then ACE, take it into ACES or take it into wide gamut in Resolve. Okay. All right, so this is the end, man. Part 1, part 2, part 3. Hopefully anybody who hung on and watched all 3, I hope you got something out of it. I really want to thank you guys for supporting. Once again, man, please like, subscribe, notify. It takes a lot out of me to do these videos, but I have a lot of people, over 20 plus years in the industry. I have a lot of people who inquire, ask direction, ask for consultation, and I just figured this is the best way to be able to impart that knowledge. But it takes a lot out. So anytime you guys can support, please share it out to other people. If you know other filmmakers, share it out to other filmmakers. Have them come in. I get a lot of you guys asking stuff in my DMs. I will try to take care of a lot of this as soon as I can. Just bear in mind, I have my own projects. I have projects I'm freelancing and projects I work on for network stuff. I only have so much time, but I'm going to get to it. I promise. Okay. Love you guys. We'll see you guys in the comments. Check out my Instagram, ACES part 1, part 2, part 3. Peace.